Jewish law, halacha, involved not only in the external life of a person, but also what happened within people, personal relationships, such as husband and wives. The halacha tells us sometimes specific details involved in the intimate relationship within the house, such as when it's come to have interaction, what type of relationship we allow and what not. What's the Jewish attitude to a forceful sexual relation between husband and wife? What is the proper attitude within the house? What happened if she feel restrained? What happened to the children that come out of relation that was improper? So this is part of our discussion today. And again, today we're going to focus on page 100 while we're starting in the Mishnah, which is on the bottom of page 99b. Mishnah, page 99b, 4 lines from the bottom of the page. Ilan shehaya meisech al haaretz, אם אין נופו גבוה מן הארץ 3 טפחים, מטלטלים תחתיו. Here is the tree, and this is the foundation, ground. You remember we talk a lot about lavud, which is the 3 handbreadth. So the Mishnah said that if the tree's branches hung down on both sides, meaning all over, all different sides, like a tent, so it's basically having shadow all over on the ground. So if the distance is only any below than 3 handbreadth, which is the size of lavud, we allow to go ahead and carry under it. What's the idea? The idea is we have one of the melachot on Shabbat. It's melacha that is called using the tree for other purposes. So therefore, if using the tree here is a prohibited, the rabbi is not allowed to climb over the trees, to put things on the tree and doing things. So here, if the whole view is not exceeded this part than 3 handbreadth, so it's considering as part of the ground, and it's considering as the it's like fully black because they don't have the lavud, and therefore you're allowed to carry. The second, שורשיו גבוהים מן הארץ 3 טפחים לא ישב עליהם. If the roots of the trees, like you see here, they have the roots of the tree. So by here, if this root of the tree is exceeded more than 3 handbreadth above ground, so he cannot sit on them. Why? We have the halacha that anything that up to 3 handbreadth, so it's considering like an aretz, like in the ground. Otherwise, it's the same as din ilan, the same as the tree, and you cannot use it. As we said, even laying on the tree or climbing on a tree, on putting things on a tree, it's forbidden, because this is one of the 39 melachot that forbidden on Shabbat, that is called kotzer, meaning cutting from the ground, and the concern that he may go ahead and cut part of the ground. Less than the 3, as we said, is considering as a ground, and they didn't put that decree. Now, with that said in the Mishnah, now the Gemara circumscribe that leniency in the first part of the Mishnah. Amar Rav Huna Breid Rav Yoshua en metaltelim bo. We speak about this situation. Yeter mi bet se'atayim. So he said that you not move. One cannot move the object, an area under the tree that is more than 2 beit se'ah. So what's the beit se'ah? Beit se'ah is like 50 by 50 cubits. So it means beit se'atayim, it's 50 by 100 cubit, which is 5,000 square cubits. So he said, Rashi explained that it's lechatchila hukaf ledira, because originally it was gathered around for the purpose of dwelling. So meaning people planning to be there. Maitama, what's the reason that it's different between that one and other that you're putting around as a place of dwelling? So they said here, page 100, משום דהווה דירה שתשמישה לאוויר, וכל דירה שתשמישה לאוויר, אין מטלטלים בה יתר מבית se'atayim. This is not a normal place of dwelling. It didn't have this partition or you're putting around for the purpose of dwelling. This particular place of air, it's made just for the airspace around that property, which means people not dwell there, people not staying there permanent. So anything that was made serves only for the air, it's not permitted to carry in the area that's more than 2 beit se'ah. Why? Because that's not a place for people to live. It's not a permanent resident. The second clause of the Mishnah, שורשן גבוהים מן הארץ, איתמר, שורשי אילן הבאים למעלה משלושה לתוך שלושה, רבה אמר מותר להשתמש בהם, רב ששת אמר אסור להשתמש בהם. So here is the next picture. 353. Everyone see it? Okay. So that's the tree, and that's the ground. That's the roots. You see how they're made. This part, if you put an imaginary line, is below than 3 handbreadth. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. So, he said here, those roots that's above the ground, so if it's rise up and then bend and come down from above, so he said from height of 3 handbreadth to within 3 handbreadth of the ground. So Rabbah said it's okay to use them, and Rav Sheshet said no, you cannot use them. Now we explain what's the reason. רבה אמר מותר להשתמש בהם, דכל פחות משלושה דארעה ארעה היא. He hold that anything that it's like lavud, right? We said anything that it's below than 3 handbreadth is like, he's saying we treat it as the ground. Next, because you basically can put it down and make it straight. Okay? Next, רב ששת אמר אסור להשתמש בהם דכיוון דמכוח איסור כעתי אסורים. He says, you have to remember that all of this one, it's basically came from the idea that it's exceeded more than 3 handbreadth. So even you can push it down, but the way that it was made, it was above than 3 handbreadth. So therefore it's prohibited. So now the Gemara brings three different situations that is depend on that disputation. One, the damu kimshunita. It looks like a meshunita is like head of the mountain. It's like imaginatory. One, the second one, the salkin le'ela, that the rise upward are simply going asurim, that is going above the 3 handbreadth. And then they said the nachti letatai sharu. So he said that those part that go letatai, that it's below the handbreadth, 3 handbreadth, sharu, you allow. So here you see here the huge difference if it's exceeded the 3 handbreadth or not. Because letatai, it's okay. Now, litzdadin, plugta de Rabba v'Rav Sheshet. If it's go on both sides, so now you have a disputation between Rabba and Rav Sheshet. Now, Rav Sheshet prohibited using them, and Rabba allowed it. V'chen anigra. The same apply to what? The tree that grows in a ditch. You see this ditch? Now you have the trees. So Rashi said, אילן היוצא מתוך חריץ קצר, העשוי להוליך מים לשדות. So this is the ditch, I can bring water to that field. So Rabbah said that you have to measure the 3 handbreadth in both sides. And you can use the side of the tree that it's not exceeded 3 handbreadth. Rav Sheshet said, you measure it even from the ditch itself. So the big question is, if you're considering this part, the section between the walls, it's considering part of the ground or not. So they said, here is an example. Ahu dikla, picture number 355. Rashi said, בתוך הבית היה עומד ועולה דרך פי ערובה למעלה מן הגג פחות מ3. You see this property? You see this tree? This tree come within the house. Audikla da'ava la'abaye v'avasalik be'ipuma. Abaye have in his house a tree, but that tree was coming out toward within the house, but it's grew in a house and projected to the opening in the roof. So, Ata lekamei de Rav Yosef. So he came before Rav Yosef and asked question: do you allow to use that or not? Mainly this part above the roof. Vesharalei. So Rav Yosef allowed Abaye to use it. Why? Because that part of the house you don't see it if you stand on the roof, and because the roof it's covered part of that tree inside the house. So Amar Rav Acha bar Tachlifa, dishra lach kerabba shra lach. He said to him, the fact that Rav Yosef allow you, he hold the same as Rabbah. That he said that the section of the tree concealed from the view in at least 2 directions, consider though it's were underground. So the first 3 handbreadth above this section may be used on Shabbat as they have status of the ground. But according to Rav Sheshet, you can't do that. Because when you stand inside the house, you can see that tree. The only thing is, you cannot see it from outside. So the Gemara asks, Pshita, that's obvious, that Rav Sheshet not allowed to use that part of the tree. So what Rav Acha Bar Tachlifa wants to tell us? So the Gemara responds, Mao the tema fil Rav Sheshet, Beita keman demalei dami. You look at the house, it's like field, like nothing is having any hole there. So they said, so the part of the tree, it's considering like inside, like tamun, like it's part of the house. And the Gemara said, ולהשתמש בפחות משלושה סמוך לגג. So maybe let him use that part, the section that is less than 3 hand breadth from the ground. Kamash melan. Therefore, they come to teach us. Rabbi Achi Bar Tachlifa told us that is not correct. But the Rav Sheshet is stringent, and he said that you cannot do it. Tnan. שורשיו גבוהים מן הארץ שלושה לא ישב עליהם. If you have the tree have a ground that it's below than 3 hand breadth, so he said he should not sit on them. Hey Chedami, what is the exact situation we're speaking here? They said id de lo hadrei kaifei, if it's not coming down below than 3 hand breadth, pshita, it's obvious that you cannot use it. אלא לאו, אף על גב דחדרי קייפי, even that they coming out around the ground, even though they bend back downward to within 3 hand breadth of the ground. So they said, it's proof to Rav Sheshet that the source is that we are basically forbids them to use them along the rest of the entire land, and that's the opposite of what Rabbah said. So the Gemara said, Lo, Leolam, the Mishnah speaking about the roots, the Lo Hadrei Kaife, that it's not coming down in a 3 hand breadth from the ground. Ooh. But in regard to what we ask, that it's obvious, is pshita kamash melan, afal gav dezido echad shave laaretz. Even one part, one level, one side of the tree of the roots are level with the ground. Nevertheless, it is prohibited to sit on them, as the root of the other side are more than 3 hand breadth above ground. So here the next picture is 356. Tanu Rabbanan, Rabbeinu Chanan said at Tanya, שורשי אילן שגבוהים מן הארץ 3 טפחים, או שיש חלל מתחתיהם 3 טפחים, אף על פי שצידו אחד שווה לארץ, הרי זה לא ישב עליהם. This part, the root is less than 3 hand breadth. So they said you cannot sit on them. Why? לפי שהם עולים באילן, ונתלים באילן, ונשענים באילן. We explained that we're not allowed to do all of this on Shabbat. You cannot hang on this tree, you cannot bend on it, you cannot put items on that, and we will not lean against the tree on Shabbat, etc. Next, how about doing it before Shabbat? ולא יעלה באילן מבעוד יום וישב שם כל היום כולו, אחד אילן ואחד כל הבהמה. One may not climb a tree on Friday while it's still day and sit there the entire day of Shabbat, because it's like using the tree, and it's not climbing but it's using the tree. So they said it makes no difference if it's a tree or an animal. One cannot climb on them and hang on them or lean against them. However, אבל בו שיח ומערב וגדר מטפס ועולה, מטפס ויורד, ואפילו אין מאה אמה. However, if it's a sitm, like a pit, a ditch, cave, and a fence, one may climb up and climb down of them, even if they are 100 cubits deep. So it's just using the example, extreme 100. The idea of the prohibition of using tree or animal, it's concern of melechet kotzer, the melacha of cutting something from the ground, but not the idea that it's a great effort to do it. That Rashi said that that's not the concern. Now we show a contradiction between the two brighter. Tan echada im ala mutar lered, v'tan echada asur lered. One brighter said that if a person went up on that tree, he cannot come down. The other one said that he allowed to do it. You need to stay there, like otherwise you need to stay there the whole time. So the kasha kan bod yom kan mishachashachad. The one that said that one climb over the tree was before the Shabbat begins, and the other one when it's already dark. So since that he's already on a tree, the sages put a fine on him and ask him to stay there until the Shabbat is over. It's like some type of fine. V'baitema ha veha mishechashecha. Both brighthoods talking about what when it's already dark. Kashya kan b'shogeg kan b'mezid. One talk about person who did it unwittingly, that just did it but it wasn't intentional. The other one is if it was totally intentional. So if a person violated Shabbat by going on a tree on Shabbat, the rabbis put a fine upon him. Another one, they speak about totally both situation, it's unwittingly. And he said, but here the two brighthoods disagree if they put a fine on someone who climbed over the tree on Shabbat, because another one that goes there intentionally. They said, Mar Savar Kansinan, one sage who ruled that it's permitted, so maintain that they said that it's prohibited, maintain that they put like a fine on a person, because they want to prevent others from climbing up for the purpose and descending. So one should not come down if he did it by mistake. And one sage who ruled that it's permitted maintained that they had not put any fine on a person for an unwitting sinner in this matter. So now we juxtapose this disputation to another one. Amar Rav Huna Breder Rav Yoshua Ketanai. That's equivalent to another one. It's Mishnah in Zvachim, page 80. Part of what we say every morning is the korbanot, is a statement from Tractate Zvachim. And one of the things that happen, we have an altar and they're sprinkling the blood for several situations, like for example for a firstborn, or they speak about other sacrifice like burnt offering and the tithe offering. So the way that they sprinkle the blood over, they go around the altar and they sprinkle the blood around the altar. So they said hanitanin bematana, the blood of the sacrifice that require only sprinkling around the altar, achat shenit'arvu be, that if it's mixed with blood of other sacrifice. So they said, for example, if you take one firstborn sacrifice, that it mixed with the blood of another firstborn sacrifice. So what do? Yinatnu bematana achat. You take it together they are sprinkled in one time, which means you do a 4 sprinkling, the mixture will be sprinkled 4 times. So they said matan arba. So I'm sorry, the first one I mixed. The first one is 1 time, and then they said the next one is matan arba b'matan arba. So we said in that Mishnah in Psachim Shtayim Shem Arba, which means you take the one offering that mix, like one for Ola offering, that mix with Shlamim or Asham, the one of the other offering that mix together. So you take the blood and you mixture and you put all the 4 times. He said matan arba b'matan achat. What happened if the blood of the sacrifice that require 4 sprinklings becomes intermingled with the blood of a sacrifice that require only 1 sprinkling? Rabbi Eliezer אומר ינתנו במתן 4 ורבי יהושע אומר ינתנו במתנה 1. Rabbi Eliezer said that you take this blood and you mixture there 4 times, and since the Torah said you should not add and you should not subtract, so it means that, for example, if you have a tefillin, so you cannot take more than, they ask you, more than the 4. If you do 5, or for example tzitzit, if you do a 3 or 5, or you take lulav in the Sukkot 5 instead of 4, so all of that, it's called bal tosif. You should not add and you should not subtract. So if you do in this mixture 2 that it's 4, because you're basically adding more than the Torah asks you. But anyway, Rabbi Eliezer said you can do it. Why? Because this mitzvah Rashi explained, it's supersede the idea of lo tosif. Here is the point. אמר לו רבי אליעזר, הרי הוא עובר על בל תגרע. So the Torah said you should not diminish. So you cannot reduce anything in performance in the mitzvah. So it's not sprinkle the blood on a burnt offering in a proper manner. So he said, in that situation, it's a violation of the Torah. As they said, אמר לו ביהושע, הרי הוא עובר בבל תוסיף. If you tell me that making these 2 mixer make it like 4, so again it transgress the prohibition, do not add. So again, sprinkling the blood of the firstborn animal more times than necessary. So each of them explain how they get there. אמר רבי אליעזר לא אמרו אלא כשהוא בעצמו. Rabbi Eliezer said that it's all apply only when the blood stand by itself, not being part of the mixture. אמר לו רבי יהושע לא נאמר בל תגרע אלא כשהוא בעצמו. So Rabbi Yeshua told him that the Torah used the term do not diminish only in the case that the blood stand by itself. ועוד אמר רבי יהושע כשנתת עברת על בל תוסיף ועשית מעשה בידיך. He said when you did the 2 by 4, so you basically violated the Torah law that you should not add, and you committed a sin in your own hand, which means you transgress the Torah command by means of a positive act. כשלא נתת עברת על בל תגרע ולא עשית מעשה בידיך. When you not sprinkle 4 times, even if you have transgressed the prohibition, do not diminish, you do not perform the action with your own hands. So he said that Rabbi Eliezer damar atam kum v'aseh adif achaname. Rabbi Eliezer that said that it's preferable to stand and take action, which means to perform a positive mitzvah, a positive action. So he said, here too one should not climb down from the tree. because we wish, and it's better to perform a single positive transgression by climbing down rather than commit a passive transgression throughout the entire Shabbat by remaining on a tree. Hachenami lo yired. So here too, he should not come down. However, ve'inami, so in other words, if he's here, he's sitting there, so he said, עד כאן לא רמה, רבי יהושע התם, שבע אל תעשה עדיף, אלא, the only time that Rabbi Yeshua said here that preferable to sit and not take an action only in a case deal with the loka v'lisura, that the person does not commit a transgression. By what? By referring from action. They said, but here, when he commits the sin, every additional moment that he remained on the tree, he should descend from it. So Rashi explains that a sprinkle of blood in one time, it's not a sin by itself. The sin is by being avoided, meaning that he is sheva al ta'aseh, that he's sitting there not doing anything, instead of mixing the four. So, but in a tree, the situation in the tree, Rashi said, the sitting there by itself, he committed a sin because he's using the tree. תן אחד אילן לך ואחד אילן יבש, ותן יידך, במה דברים אמורים בלך, אבל ביבש מותר. So they have two different ways. One said that it's a play, what in a case that it's a tree that it's a wet, or tree that it's a dry. And the other one said that when we are forbidden to use the tree on Shabbat, it's only in the wet one. But if it's a dry one, you can go ahead and climb on it. So why? Because think about it, the tree that it's dry, so it's no longer it's something that's growing. And someone who cut part of that, it's not a violation, direct violation of Kotzer. Magen Avraham in Shin Lamed Aleph explain it. אמר רב יהודה לא קשיא, כאן שגזעו מחליף וכאן באין גזעו מחליף. So when we talk about the tree, one referred to the stump sends out new shoots when cut, and the other one speak about the stump does not send out the new shoots. So again, the whole question is if that tree is a living tree, and therefore is considering growing tree or not. Giz'o machlif yavesh karet lei. So they said, you call the tree whose stump sends out new shoot dry? It's not dry at all. It's not a question. One is speaking about summer, one is a winter. So the winter, everyone, people not realize that it's dry. But in the summer, everyone see that it's dry because the wet tree brings out leaves. But the dry one, people not. So therefore, they not suspected him that he's using a wet tree. Ask, but he said in the summer the fruit of the previous year left on a dry tree and will fall off when it's climate, and climbing the tree should be prohibited only if someone pick up the fruit. So they said beleka pere, you have to say there is no fruits involved. Vakanatri kinse. So they said, but those small tiny tree, the small branches will fall off. So they said, Big Duda, the tree has really been stripped of all its small branches. So the Gemara said, Eini, is that true? Rav Ikla le'aspartia ve'asar Big Duda. Rav came to the city called Aspartia, and he forbids the resident to climb even the tree that already been stripped of all branches. So they said, Rav b'kamatza v'gadar b'gader. Rav found a place that it was open, there's no guard, everything was open, and he put a fence around it. So I explain in my book, Biruak Lomar Berashi al Hashas, that Rashi here wants to use, he says, Klomar enam b'nei Torah she'yodim lizer ki bikash lanu shomer v'akol parutz. He wants to say that when the rabbis come to a conclusion that certain people who are not familiar and they come to committed all kind of sin because they are not so educated, so he put the boundaries to make sure that people not have these mistakes. You see the same in Chulin, in Chulin, Kuf Yud, 110. The same thing. There is a Sherot v'Tshuvot, is a response called Binyamin Ze'ev in Siman Shin Kav Gimel. He explained it also Rabbeinu Hananel. So the Gemara said, Amarami baraba amaravasi, asur le'adam shi'alech al gabe asavim b'Shabbat. Now since we talk about trees, we're going also at the other field, like using grass, because that decree applies specifically on the trees. So Rav Asi said that one, it's prohibited from a person to walk on the grass on Shabbat, mishum shenemar ve'atz beraglayim choteh, because they said in the book of Proverbs, chapter 19, and he who hastens with his feet sins. So walking occasionally is involved with sin, which means in Shabbat, when one might uproot the grass on which he walks. So that's the idea. And the Metzudat David explained over there in the book of Proverbs that a person should look what he's doing. I'll give you an example. My uncle, I have an uncle, he is the one of the Hasidic rabbis. He's called the Tolner Rebbe. His name is Rabbi Yitzchak Menachem Weinberg. So we have a yortzeit for my late grandfather once a year, and we go to the Mount Olives, the family, to visit the grave. So I noticed every year when we do that, that my uncle, he is very careful not to step on graves on a cemetery and go in a long circling around those graves to make sure that he's not stepping on any grave. So it's not just stepping on graves. The whole idea that person should watch, he explained to us, watch over any spot he is walking. So for example, you should not walk on the grass because you should watch what you're doing. You may uprooting some grass from the ground while walking. So they ask, in one place we say that you're allowed to do it, in the other one we say that it's prohibited. So it's not difficult. One talk about wet one, and the other one is talk about dry, which means you have a green grass and you have a dry grass. It's already been cut off from the source of life. So it's not in the prohibition of reaping, it's not in effect, it's dry already. So if you ever go on the grass and it's dry, it's not an issue. Both Brighton speaks about green grass. One speak about summer, the other one talk about winter time. So it's the winter time that you don't have those seeds. So you don't have that issue. The problem does not exist. The Rashi explained that a person will not cut those seeds that is in the ground while he's walking. V'bai tema, the third option to understand it. Have Rabbi Moshe Weisblum v'lo kasha kan de mesane sanei had lo mesane sanei. One talk about using his shoes and one not. So because otherwise, if he walking there, it may turns that it intermingle with his feet, and then he turn and he cut. V'bai tema, the fourth option, have had the same mesane. Both bridal talk about someone who wearing his shoes. It's not a question because one shoe has a spike, so the grass maybe get caught and uprooted, the other one not. Another option that both referring when the shoe has a spike, and it's not a question. So one referring to a case where the grass is long and entangled, and the other one is not. So they said, "Ve'aina dekaimalan k'Rabbi Shimon." But we hold that the halacha is according to Rabbi Shimon that davar she'eno mitkaven mutar, that something that it wasn't involved in intent, it's permissible, which means you're doing something that it's okay to do on Shabbat, and you know in advance that another consequence come out of that work, but it is not in his intent to the additional action. So we explain on Shabbat 22 that is a disputation between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon and other places. So they said, Kulu Share. So all of these scenarios are permitted. So here too, the person's intention is merely to walk and not to uproot the grass on Shabbat. So even it may happen, that was not in his intent. Now at the end of this Masechet, a lot of Agadotot. So this part also involved with Agadotot. It's a learning in the rabbinic writings. It's like stories, legends, teachings, and more. ואמר רמי בר חמא אמר רב אסי, אסור לאדם שיחוף אשתו לדבר מצווה, שנאמר ואץ ברגליים לחוטא. So they say that a man should not force his wife to do the mitzvah of being fruitful and multiply. So they said because they use the book of Proverbs chapter 19, and they use the term, and he was hastened with his feet sins. So it's feet is understood here as a euphemism for intercourse. ואמר רב יהושע בן לוי כל הכופה אשתו לדבר מצווה הביא לו בלין שאינם מנוגנים. If someone forces his wife to have relation, he will have sons that it was not unworthy children. אמר רב איקה בר חנינא מה יקרא גם בלא דעת נפש לא טוב. What does that mean when they use the pasuk gam belo dat, the soul without knowledge is not good, is Proverbs 19. So if the intercourse take place without the woman's knowledge, which means consent, the soul of the offspring will not be good. We said tanina me'achi gam belo dat nefesh lo tov ze הכופה אשתו לדבר מצווה ואז ברגליים בחושב זה הבועל ושונה. So one part of the pasuk said that it's applied to one who forces his wife to perform this type of mitzvah, but it's a forceful act. And the second one is when we use the term and one who hastened with his feet sin, it means that the one who repeat the act of intercourse and it caused her distress or pain, etc. Because Rashi explained that it's like not fully consent of her. So the Gemara asks, Eini, is that true? There's a statement by Rabbah that said that the wife, after the first intercourse, she was already in a state of consentment, meaning that she agreed and she's part of that, and therefore she wished to have another intercourse, and therefore there is several sources. We said it in Brachot, page 60, and also Rashi said in Genesis in Bereshit 46:15. Rabbeinu Bachya said in Vayikra in Leviticus 12:2 that if it's more than once, it's having a baby boy. So Lokashya Kanadat Kanshlo, that one is expressed when she wished to, and the other one is without her concern. So if she's not concerned, it's really imposing. So it's a famous Ravid. The Ravid said in the Balei HaNefesh, famous writing, and he said that if someone is in that situation, what exactly, how a person can control. And he says that I promise if someone intends to do a mitzvah, you'll have baby boys without that. So in other words, is the key point is the person's intent according to Eiruvin. אמר רבי שמואל בר נחמני אמר רבי יוחנן כל אישה שתאבד בעלה לדבר מצווה אביה לבנים שאפילו בדורו של משה לא היה כמותן. If the wife she ask her husband for the relation, demand a husband that fulfill the mitzvah, so she have the merit, the husband and wife, to have children that wasn't even in the era of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. Dilu b'dorah shel Moshe k'tiv, that in Moses' time it's written in Deuteronomy chapter 1, Ahavu lachem anashim chachamim ונבונים וידועים לשבטיכם וכתיב ויקח את ראשי שבטיכם ואשים שבטיכם אנשים חכמים וידועים. So meaning that he found a man that wise, ואילו נבונים לא אשכח, but deep understanding that it is more lofty quality than wisdom, Moshe Rabbeinu could not find any of these. So they said, ואילו גבי לאה כתיב, they said about Leah in the book of Genesis chapter 30, ותצא לאה לקראתו, meaning Leah came to greet Jacob when he came from the field in the evening, and they said, ותאמר אלי תבוא כי שכור שכרתיך. So it means that Leah asked Jacob to come and have relation with her, that in that night the Torah said that they have a baby boy Yisachar. Uchtiv, they said in the book of Chronicles, chapter 12, ומבני יששכר יודעי בינה לעתים, that the descendants of Yisachar, they are people who have the understanding, the wisdom to give counseling to others. לדעת מה יעשה ישראל, that need to teach people how to behave properly, ראשיהם 200 וכל אחריהם על פיהם, that their heads are 200 and everyone follow their teaching. So the Gemara asks, does that mean that the woman should demand a husband? Ini? Is that true? ואמר רבי יצחק בר אבדימי 10 כלות נקרא חווה. He said that Eve was cursed with 10 curses to the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge. Remember that said in the book of Genesis chapter 3, to the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your pain and your travail. In sorrow you shall bring forth children, and yet your desire shall be to your husband, and he shall rule over you. That is in Genesis chapter 3. So they said, Dichtiv El Aisha Amar Arba Arbe. So they said that the God said to the woman, I'll greatly multiply. Elu shnei tipei damin. They are 2 drops of blood unique to a woman, which is achad dam nida. One is the blood of the menstruation, ואחד דם בתולים, and the other one is blood of virginity. Itzvonech, זה צער גידול בנים. Your pain, your sorrow is the pain of raising children. והרונך זה צער העיבור. And your travail is the pain of pregnancy. בעצב תלדי בנים. In sorrow you shall bring forth children. כמשמעו, which means the pain of childbirth. ולישך תשוקתך, מלמד שהאישה משתוקקת על בעלה בשעה שיוצא לדרך. So, and you desire shall be in your husband, teaches that the woman desires her husband when he sets out on the road. והוא ימשול בך, and he rule over you. מלמד שהאישה טובעת בפה והאיש טובע בלב, האישה טובעת בלב והאיש טובע בפה. This teacher, the woman demands her husband in her heart, but it's too embarrassing to ask, and the man demand his wife verbally. Zoi midat tova shebalashim. This is a good trait in women, that refrain from formulating their desire verbally, which means it's not proper for women to do it. Ki kamrinan demeratzia ayutze kamei. So one is it said that it's proper for her to do it. Says when she should make herself pleasing to him, which means that she wearing a nice garments, and she talk in a calm ways, etc. So in conclusion, there is an asking question, because it's not the real order. The first you have a pregnancy, and then you have the delivery, etc. Here they're using a different order. So the answer is, they say that when Eve committed the sin, it was afterward, which means the first part of her pregnancy wasn't in that state of sin, and later it happens. So that's some Meforshim explain why it's written here this order. So again, Rav Yitzchak did not specify all the 10 that Eve was cursed. Hanei Sheva Havyan. All this list are only 7. So where are the other 3? כי את רב דימי אמר, עטופה כאבל ומדונה מכל אדם וחבושה בבית האסורים. Rav Dimi said when he came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylon, he said that the other curses are the woman wrapped like a mourner. She had to cover her head, and she ostracized from people and incarcerated with the prison. Typically she spent her all time in the house, like she feel that she's in the prison. What is the meaning that she is ostracized from all people? If you say that it's because it's forbidden for her to seclude herself with a man, it's also for men to seclude himself with women. It means it's forbidden for her to marry 2 men versus men that have more than one. So the Meshech Chochma in Bereshit chapter 3 sentence 16 said that that's part of what the Jewish community accept upon themselves. You remember that we discussed her and the Rabbeinu Gershom, that he put upon Ashkenazim not to marry more than 1 wife. Sfaradim, at least in the early time, they did it, that men have more than ones, but nowadays more Sfaradim follow this Ashkenazic teaching not to have more than 1 wife.
Is this because the government, or this is just their own decision?
No, the Rabbeinu Gershom have the issue of tzara, that one woman gets very uncomfortable or even jealous of the other woman, and it creates tension in the house. Anyway.
But if they do it, it is permitted in this time?
Again, Talmudic time is different.
Oh, okay.
But they talk here about men more than one wives, but women cannot have more than one man. That's the way that they said it here.
Yeah.
במתנית התנא מגדלת שיער כלילית ויושבת ומשתנת מים כבהמה ונעשית קר לבעלה. So they said in the Braita that there are three curses are that she grow her hair long like a lilit, which is a demon, and she sits and urinates like an animal, and serves as a pillow for her husband during relations. So it's kind of feelings that's the way Hashem created the world. Ve'idach hanei shevach ula. And why doesn't the other sages include these curses? The Gemara explained that they maintain that these are praise for her, not pain. Why? Either because they are modest practices, for example, urinating a seated position, or a bottom position during relations, etc. The Amar Rabbi Chia, ואידך הנה שבח הולד, אמר רבי חייא מאי דכתיב מלפנינו מבהמות ארץ ומעופר שמיים יחכמנו. He said in the book of Yov, in the Job 35, who will teach us in the beasts of the earth. So what does that mean? He said that this is a praise to her. That's the Maharsha explained to us, that it's not something that make her less, but quite the contrary, even better, because they show us an example for those animals. מלפני בהמות זה פרידה שקורת משתה מים, מעופר שמיים יחכמנו זה תנוג שמפייס ואחר כך בועל. So we see here this example of animals. For example, the female mule, which crouches and urinates, so you learn modesty, and make us wiser by the bird of the sky. This is a rooster, because the rooster, which first conjure the hen and then mate with her. So in other words, they convince her, which the Gemara going to explain to us soon. אמר רבי יוחנן, מלמדנו לפני התורה, אם לומדים צניעות מחתול ולגזר מלמעלה והערות מיונה. If it was a situation that, God forbid, we don't have the Torah, so we nonetheless learn modesty from the cat, which cover what the feces, and the stealing from an aunt that work very hard to get what they have. And he said, and the arayot and forbidden relations from the dove, which is a faithful to its partner. So, and the proper relations from the rooster, which first appeared the hen and then mate with her. So Rashi explains that that's apply only people who are not Torah observants, but the Torah observants in a sense are very careful not to do it. But when you speak about Gezel Menemala, stealing from the aunt, so they say that they share together, but not in other words, they don't steal from each other, but they steal from the owner. Anyway, Yonah והעריות מיונה, and we said that the forbidden relation from the dove, דרך ארץ מתרנגול, the proper relations from the rooster, שמפייס ואחר כך בועל, that the rooster first appease, and then the hen, and then mate with her. ומה היא מפייס לה? What exactly the rooster appease the hen? אמר רבי יהודה אמר רב אחי כאמר לה, that's what he said to her, זבין לך זיגה דמתו לך עד קראך. So he goes to her and he says, guess what, I'm going to buy you a coat and that will reach down to your feet. So she expecting to get that gift and show that it's important. But after they have the relation, he said, which means he said, oh, may the crest of this rooster fell off if he has the wherewith and and if does not, if you have it, does not buy it for you, which means you have no money to do it. So the Rabbi Yankele Galinsky, the great rabbi, the great speaker, asked a question. He says, wait, what do you mean by that? Imagine the man promised his wife to give her a long coat, okay, and she expecting that. Now you have relation with her, and then he said he have no money. So then he come again, and he said to her, oh, I promised you a long coat. Now she know already that last time he promised, and he didn't follow up the promise. So Rabbi Yankele Galinsky explained that even promise by itself, it's considering something. Even the idea that you have the notion of promising, it's also carries some meaning.